A lie can only live for so long. At first, it may seem harmless. You let your wife believe the future is still safe. But eventually, somebody makes that phone call. And for Lori Hacking, that phone call changed everything. She was young, pregnant, and preparing to move across the country with her husband Mark, who'd been accepted into medical school in North Carolina. But 4 days before Lori vanished, she called that school herself, and there was no record of him. No acceptance, no housing, no future waiting for them. Just years of lies. 4 days later, Mark called 911 and said Lori had gone for an early morning jog and never came home. At first, it sounded possible, but then the police found her car abandoned, but her keys were still inside the apartment. So was Lori Hacking really a missing jogger, or had these lies now taken on a life of their own? Lori Soares was born in Los Angeles, California. Not much is known about her birth parents, but she was eventually adopted by Thelma and Eraldo Soares. The couple had 2 kids of their own, and they welcomed her in with open arms. When she was young, she attended Pacific Drive Elementary School in Fullerton, but then she moved to Utah in 1988 with Thelma when she was just 12. The reason was divorce. She was the 9th grade class president in her school, and she graduated with her high school diploma in 1995. One thing about her is that she knew how important financial independence was. She took part-time jobs to earn extra money and was all around very responsible. She'd been through ups and downs at various points in her early life, from being adopted to witnessing her adoptive parents' divorce and now moving to a new city. Sometimes she felt like a fish out of water, but she carried on nonetheless. She also had a close group of friends. She was well known in the neighborhood, and she was very kind and caring, and held on to her faith strongly too. In high school, she crossed paths with a person who would become the love of her life. Her high school sweetheart turned future husband was Mark Hacking. They met at a school camping trip, and a long friendship started, which then converted into something more serious when they both turned 19. Their relationship did start off a bit topsy-turvy because Mark actually cheated on Lori and spent the night at another woman's home when he was on a Mormon mission trip in Canada. He was in a new place all by himself, and there was no one to stop him, so he thought he would take advantage of this newfound freedom. Now, this was obviously frowned upon in the Mormon faith, and by anyone really, so naturally, he was sent home in disgrace. Now granted, his and Lori's relationship was not as serious during this time, but they were still seeing each other. Lori didn't engage in anything like that outside of, her and Mark's relationship. But he did, and, karma got the better of him, and he was sent back to Utah. But he apparently managed to appease the concerns of his family, and then more seriously pursued that relationship with Lori. Now, Mark came from a pretty financially stable family. His dad was a doctor, a pediatrician to be exact, and he wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps. His brother was an accomplished engineer and had a stable job, so you can tell that he belonged to an ambitious and successful family. People described him as chill, charming, and humorous, and a bit of an attention seeker. Now, Lori was studying politics and business at Weber State University on a scholarship before transferring to the University of Utah to finish her degree there. After her graduation in '99, she worked at American Express and later at Wells Fargo. She also won several academic accolades during her university tenure, and to put it shortly, she was doing well for herself. As for Mark, he was also enrolled at the University of Utah, and he chose the field of medicine. The couple eventually got married in August of '99, and Mark decided he wanted to pursue his medical studies even further, so they moved to Salt Lake City to find more opportunities, because according to him, he couldn't find jobs that matched his expectations. So the couple worked and they focused on their lives in a new city, and they were also planning to have a baby. Now, Mark got the urge to complete his studies once again, and this time he set his sights on the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. The young couple wasn't exactly struggling, but they weren't in the best place financially either. I mean, sure, they both had jobs, but they needed more to sustain themselves and eventually start a family. And for that, Mark thought he had to become a full-fledged doctor to give his family the life of their dreams. Lori was fully supportive of this every step of the way. Moving cities, that too shortly after getting married, wasn't easy, but she stepped up and thought these obstacles were just the trivial trials of life. One day, the couple got the news that they had been anticipating for a while now. Mark had finally been accepted into UNC, and he was also given campus accommodation, which would be pretty reasonable compared to living in the city. So it was set. The couple was going to move to North Carolina in no time. But Lori had no idea that the future they were packing for wasn't even waiting for them. So Mark's family was obviously a bit well-to-do, very highly accomplished. But Mark, well, he was struggling to keep up the image. And it actually turns out Mark didn't complete his studies while at the University of Utah. If you remember, he and Lori were studying there. But the truth is, only Lori was the one to get her degree. So if he didn't have a pre-med degree, he obviously couldn't apply to UNC and get that job, right? Well, yeah, that is right. He not only lied about having gotten that job lined up, but he also lied about ever even applying to UNC at all. It's a different thing if he applied and got rejected, but the guy didn't even send in an application. He was lying to his wife and his family. He claimed that he was too sick to attend the graduation ceremony and would collect his degree later, and everyone believed him at the time. But then he also lied about having a job. At one point before his marriage, he was working as a psychiatric aide. In other words, he was basically a care assistant to patients. But during that time, he went around telling everyone he was a therapist, even though he didn't meet the qualifications. And this seemingly became a trend in Mark's life, claiming to be something he wasn't, and then lying about all of his credentials. And all of this was taking place while Lori was blissfully unaware. In fact, she was proud of her husband for all of his amazing accomplishments, but she had no idea that each and every one of these stories was a total fabrication. But if Mark didn't have this medical job lined up, it begs the question, why was he so adamant about moving to North Carolina? He didn't even apply there, which means he didn't have campus accommodation, so where were they even going to live? And why didn't he tell his wife about this? What was he doing all this time pretending to write papers, do assignments, and coming back from university with a bag full of textbooks? Well, those answers would have to wait, because just now, Lori had now found out she was pregnant. So imagine this. You have a young married couple living in Salt Lake City, Utah, preparing to move to North Carolina, completely on the opposite side of the country. You've handed in your notices at work, and now you found out your husband is lying about his qualifications, his studies, and he doesn't even have a reliable place for you to live, and also you're pregnant. You have no savings, no plan in sight, and you're just taking it a day at a time. I don't know about you, but even hearing about this would stress me out. But Lori was still very happy, and that's because at this point, she was still living in that blissful ignorance of Mark's lies. But soon enough, the cracks started to show, and the levee would finally break when Lori made just one phone call. It was July 15th of 2004 when Lori thought to call the UNC administration office to ask about her husband's accommodation, his student loan, and everything else involved in medical school. But what she learned from the person on the other end of that line left her dumbfounded. There was no record of Mark in the university's application record. There was nothing. The school had no idea who he even was. Understandably, she felt betrayed, heartbroken, and deceived. Her husband of 5 years, her high school sweetheart, the father of her unborn child, had been lying to her all along. And it wasn't about something recent either. He'd been lying to her since they were studying together at the University of Utah years ago. She was totally blindsided and so completely paralyzed by this that she had to leave work for the day. It's unimaginable to think what she must have been going through at that time. Here she was in that wonderful pregnancy bliss, supporting her struggling husband every step of the way. And what did she get in return? A mountain of lies with a healthy side of disbelief and betrayal. But the worst part is, Lori wouldn't even get the chance to sort through this massive trash heap of emotional turmoil, because just 4 days later, she went missing. It was the morning of July 19th, 2004, and right before 11 a.m., 911 received a call from none other than Mark. He informed the dispatcher that his wife had gone for an early morning jog at around 6 a.m. while he was at home, and she hadn't returned since then. Now, this jog wasn't out of the ordinary for her. She routinely jogged in the Memory Grove and City Creek Canyon area northeast of downtown Salt Lake City. And on this particular day, she even asked her husband to come with her, but he refused and just went back to bed, so she went on her own. He was worried that she was in trouble, or maybe she needed help. He just had a feeling that something had gone horribly wrong. After all, she was pregnant at the time, only about 5 weeks along, but early pregnancy complications and risks were always there. So naturally, the police took this disappearance seriously, especially since she had failed to show up for work. Now, you might be thinking, didn't she already hand in her notice for leave? Since the couple was moving to North Carolina and all. Well, yes, she did, but until they moved, she did still have to work. And she was the type of person that always showed up on time. If she had a prior commitment, then she would make it a point to inform her workplace or at least her coworkers. But she was unreachable. Texts to her went unanswered. Calls went to voicemail, and she was radio silent. So the search was on. Police officers searched walking trails, wooded areas, and nearby places to see if they could find her or any clue that could lead them to her. Family and friends were extremely worried. It was completely out of character for her to just up and leave. She didn't even take any of her belongings with her. She simply went for a jog and never came back home. An anxious Mark also turned to the media to help spread the news of his wife's disappearance. He pleaded with anyone and everyone to come forward with any information, and come forward they did. But not the public or the community. It was actually friends and family members of Lori's. And they came to the police not with tips, but with suspicions. First of all, that work friend of hers who witnessed her breaking down at work following that revelation of Mark's lies, well, she told the police everything. All about his lies, the deception, all of it. Then several family friends also came forward and notified the police about the changes in Mark's behavior, especially after he found out that his wife was pregnant. Now, from what we know, or at least what was visible on the outside, both Mark and Lori wanted to start a family. Now, she wanted a big family with lots of kids because she came from a small family growing up and wanted something a bit different. You would think that Mark would be over the moon when he found out about this good news, but he wasn't, and he didn't even try to hide it. He seemed withdrawn and not excited at all, and those emotions were visible to family and friends. Now, there could be an explanation for it. Seeing as the couple was struggling a bit financially, maybe he was focused more on completing his studies to become a doctor. That could be why he was not as happy or as excited as he should have been. But even then, well, it takes two to make a baby. If he didn't want a child so soon and his studies were a top priority for him, he could have just talked things out with his wife. But seeing Lori elated over the pregnancy and Mark's lack of a reaction, it stood out to everyone. So naturally, the police started looking directly at him, but now in a different light. They now wanted to know his side of the story. What was really happening on the day that his wife went missing? So they headed to Mark and Lori's home, and immediately what they found inside that house, it set off every alarm bell they had. Mark didn't put up a fight when the police asked to search the couple's apartment. But as soon as they entered, they noticed a couple of, well, bizarre things. The house looked and smelled immaculately clean. It looked like a model home with that level of cleanliness, like it had been recently and completely scrubbed clean from floor to ceiling. Then the police went into the bedroom and noticed a brand new mattress on the bed, with the packaging just kind of laying on the floor beside it. Now, this wouldn't be alarming on any normal day, but right now, when a pregnant woman was missing, that detail stood out like a sore thumb. Who has time to go mattress shopping when your wife is missing? When the police asked Mark to explain the new mattress, he said that Lori had soiled the previous one with some kind of bleeding accident, and this was why they needed a new mattress. The police also found out that he'd bought that mattress the very morning his wife went missing, before he ever even called the police. Strange. But speaking of strange, just a day after his wife's disappearance, Mark was also put in the hospital. Now, this may sound like a drastic turn of events, And that's because it was, because the rest of the story is even stranger. It turned out the police were called to the neighborhood that the family lived in after receiving reports about something they could never have expected to see. They found a completely nude man running around the neighborhood wearing nothing but flip-flops. When the police got there, they found out that that manic man was none other than Mark Hacking himself. He was apparently emotionally unstable over his wife's disappearance and was admitted to a psych ward after this for mental evaluation. While at the hospital, he also got an attorney, a prominent one at that, whose name was Gilbert Athay, and he was known as a very popular and successful defense attorney in the community. With this, the police's suspicions grew even more. First, the whole mattress story. Then, him running around the neighborhood nude. Then him getting an attorney. I don't even know how to explain this. It was just unsettling, and the investigators knew he was hiding something. So they decided to search the house once again, and this time they brought in forensic teams to the bedroom and swabbed every inch of the area. And soon enough, they found suspicious and alarming stains on and near the bed frame. A weapon with Lori's DNA on it was also recovered, and they also found her car keys inside the apartment. But speaking of her car, it was found the same day that she went missing, and there were a couple of things wrong with it too. Aside from being unlocked and abandoned in a street near where she jogged, the driver's seat was pushed all the way back. Now, this was concerning for a very pivotal reason. See, Lori was petite, and she didn't need to recline her seat all the way back. Now, yes, she was pregnant, and sometimes you have to bring the seat back to make room for the bump, but she was not even showing at the time. She was only 5 weeks along, so there was no bump. So why was the seat reclined so far back? According to the police, someone else, with a physical stature bigger than Lori's, was driving her car around that time. And right now, the only bulky guy they had on their radar was her own husband. And the fact that the keys were at the apartment with Mark and not found either in the car or with Lori, well, that told the police everything they wanted to know. They now strongly believed he had been the one driving her car, but they still didn't have her body. It would have been a slam dunk case if they could have found her, as Lori was now believed to have passed away. So the police got to work, and this time they focused on dumping sites and landfills. And that was when they found something. They found a soiled, stained mattress, possibly the one that Mark had conveniently discarded. And also a handwritten letter was obtained, and it was written by Lori. And in it, she expressed how tired she was of her husband constantly lying to her. And she admitted she wanted a divorce. At the hospital, Mark's family came to visit him and implored with him to just tell them what had happened to Lori. And by this point, he knew he couldn't keep his lies up any longer. And finally, Mark decided to come clean about it all. Mark confessed to his brother that he ended Lori's life. So immediately after this confession, on August 2nd of 2004, Mark was arrested in connection with his pregnant wife's death. The police believed that the two had gotten into an argument over his constant lying and her finding out about his deceit through the UNC administration personnel. Maybe she demanded a divorce from him, which, if you know anything about the Mormon community and faith, is frowned upon and technically a very distasteful last resort to ending a marriage. So after the fight with Lori and everything, when they went to sleep, Mark went through his stuff, found a weapon, and carried out the crime, tragically ending her life right then and there. This man was just consumed with rage. It wasn't like he was filled with shame or, anything about being found out. No, it sounds a lot more like he was just angry about her calling him out and threatening to end their life together. But after the deed was done, he disposed of Lori and the mattress in a dumpster. And it would take police 2 months of searching to finally locate Lori's remains, and they were eventually found at a Salt Lake City landfill. After this discovery, Thelma, Lori's mother, she was inconsolable. She demanded justice and wanted Mark, the person who was supposed to protect her against all odds, for better or worse, to face consequences. Mark was eventually charged with first-degree murder, and he initially pleaded not guilty to all the charges, much to no one's surprise. I mean, the guy did just openly confess to the crime, but you know how these things work. He wanted his chance at getting the last word and spinning the story however he saw fit, his specialty. But thankfully, in the end, on April 15th of 2005, he changed his plea to guilty for the murder of his wife in exchange for the state dropping many of the additional charges against him. But here's where things get worse. On June 6th of 2005, Mark Hacking was sentenced to life in prison. But that's not all. The sentence carried a minimum term of 6 years for murdering his wife and their unborn child, for lying to everyone for so long, for deceiving everyone who knew and supported him, all because he wasn't smart enough to be a doctor. Now, following this outcry over this sentencing, the laws were reevaluated, and that minimum sentence was increased from 6 years to 15 years. This was implemented under a new law called Lori's Law. And following this, a criminal will be sentenced to a minimum of 15 years in prison for crimes like this. Thankfully, this law also updated Mark's sentence, and now he was going to spend a minimum of 30 years behind bars and won't be eligible for parole until 2035. So some level of justice did come, and thankfully it came before he was released. He's currently incarcerated at Central Utah Correctional Facility in Gunnison. And in 2006, about 2 years into his sentencing, it was reported he was caught selling personal items, hand tracings, autographs, prison forms, and magazines on an online website called Murder Auction. He was literally making money off of his wife's murder during his incarceration, but he wasn't given any additional time for this. As for Lori, she was laid to rest in Orem City Cemetery, and the last name of Hacking was finally removed from her gravestone at the request of her family, and good on them. But what's so haunting about this case is the why. Why did Mark have to go to such lengths to get rid of his wife and their child? What happened that day? Was it really just a fight over lies, or was there something else? Did he really just lose his cool because Lori was leaving him and found out? Or was it something else? But also, why did Mark want to go to North Carolina of all places in the first place? I think we've already established he wasn't going there to study, so what was the plan? Was there something else he was hiding? Is there somehow even more to this story? The honest truth is, we'll never know, because Mark isn't talking, and Lori isn't here to share her side of the story.